What would you do if you found yourself stranded on a hostile planet with an alien who's suddenly feeling things she can't control? Jason Parker's mind raced as he stepped into the dense forest, the alien world around him eerily silent. His spaceship had crashed, and he'd barely made it out alive. But there, standing before him, was Alira. She was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Tall, with striking blue skin and eyes that seemed to burn with intensity. She'd been in a dangerous situation before, but now, with the storm raging outside, the danger was all too real. Her breath was quickening, her eyes narrowing as if in pain. "Alira, are you okay?" he asked, his voice filled with concern, though a strange tension filled the air. She didn't respond at first, just stared at him, and then, I don't know, she whispered. "Something's wrong." Jason frowned. "What do you mean?" Alira took a step forward, her movements graceful but hesitant. "My species, we have a unique response to certain stimuli." Her voice dropped lower. "When exposed to human pheromones, my body reacts in ways I cannot control." Jason's heart skipped a beat. He was too close now, the scent of sweat from his long journey mixing with the thick, humid air of the alien world. His senses were on high alert, but something about her words left him frozen. "So, you're saying, yes," Alira cut him off, her voice filled with urgency. "It's like an instinct, a biological reaction." Jason felt a knot form in his stomach. He wasn't sure what to make of this, but he knew one thing. They couldn't stay out here for much longer. The storm was growing fiercer. "We need shelter," he said, his voice firm. But Alira didn't move. She seemed to be struggling with something, an internal battle he couldn't quite understand. "I can't," she began, her eyes filled with a mix of confusion and desire. "It's too strong." Jason stepped back, instinctively wanting to give her space, but the tension in the air was palpable. He could see it in her. Her body was responding to something he couldn't stop, something that was completely out of his control. Alira took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling rapidly. "I don't want this," she murmured, her voice almost a whisper. Jason wasn't sure what to say. He didn't want to make things worse, but he couldn't ignore the chemistry between them. The storm outside raged louder as the temperature dropped, but inside, the tension was even more unbearable. Jason looked at her, the alien who was so much like him, yet so different. He had to make a choice, one that could change everything. "We need to get inside," he said, his voice steady, but his heart pounding in his chest. Alira finally nodded, and together, they moved toward the shelter he'd found earlier, neither one knowing what would happen next, but both feeling the pull of something much stronger than the storm. As they moved into the small shelter, the winds outside howled with increasing force. The makeshift cabin offered little protection from the storm, but it was better than nothing. Alira closed the door behind them, her movements still stiff as she leaned against the wall, her eyes flickering between Jason and the storm outside. Jason didn't know what to say. The silence between them felt heavier than the storm, filled with something neither of them could ignore. Alira sat down, her body trembling slightly as she tried to compose herself. Jason noticed her discomfort, but he didn't dare approach too quickly. He had no idea what was happening to her, but the look in her eyes told him this wasn't something she could control. "Alira." Jason finally spoke, his voice calm but filled with concern. "What do you need from me? How can I help?" She glanced up at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "I don't know," she whispered. "It's like my body is changing. I can't stop it. I can't explain it." Jason took a step closer, trying to keep his distance, but not wanting to leave her feeling isolated. "We'll figure it out," he said, his tone reassuring. He knelt down beside her, his mind racing as he tried to make sense of the situation. Alira's breath was shallow, her eyes focused on the floor as if she were fighting an internal battle. Jason could see the strain in her features, the way her body seemed to react involuntarily to the proximity between them. She glanced up at him again, her gaze soft but filled with something else, something deeper. "I've never felt this way before," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "It's overpowering. I can't think straight." Jason's heart pounded in his chest. He wasn't sure what was happening, but he could see the struggle in Alira's eyes. He could feel it too, the tension between them growing with each passing second. He wanted to say something, anything, to ease her discomfort, but the words caught in his throat. "It's okay," he said finally, his voice steady. We'll get through this together. You're not alone. Alira gave a small nod, but her eyes betrayed her uncertainty. She knew something was happening to her that she couldn't control, and it was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Jason sat beside her, maintaining a careful distance, but there was no denying the chemistry between them. The air in the shelter felt thick with unspoken tension, and both of them knew it was only a matter of time before something would have to give. What happens next? Jason asked, his voice soft but urgent. Alira hesitated, her gaze fixed on the door. I don't know, she admitted. I don't know how to stop this. I don't know what's going to happen. But I do know one thing. We have to stay calm. We have to work together. Jason nodded, his mind still racing. He didn't know what was coming next, but he knew he couldn't leave her side now. They were in this together, no matter what happened next. As the storm raged outside, the tension between them grew, and for the first time, Jason wasn't sure where this would lead. But he knew one thing. They couldn't face it alone. The storm outside howled relentlessly, the sound of the wind pressing against the walls of the shelter as Jason and Alira sat in tense silence. Inside, the only noise was the soft rustling of Alira's breath, each inhale quick and shallow. Jason kept his eyes on the floor, trying to give her space, but his mind was racing. The way she reacted to his presence was becoming harder to ignore. The air in the small room felt thick with a palpable tension, and Jason couldn't help but notice the way Alira's gaze flickered toward him, her eyes still clouded with confusion and something else, something deeper. She was struggling, trying to keep her composure, but Jason could see it in her eyes, the uncertainty and the battle within her. He couldn't stand seeing her like this. Alira, he said, his voice low but firm, you're not alone in this. Whatever's happening, we'll get through it together. Alira looked at him, her lips parting as if she wanted to say something, but she closed her mouth again, her expression a mixture of vulnerability and strength. I don't know how much longer I can control it, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to do. It's like my body is betraying me. Jason took a deep breath, trying to steady his own racing heart. Listen, we'll take this one step at a time, he said, his voice steady. Just tell me what I need to do to help. Alira's eyes softened for a moment, but the look of pain was still there, hidden beneath the surface. I've never felt anything like this before. The pull, the urge. It's overwhelming. Jason nodded, understanding more than she realized. He didn't know the specifics of what Alira was going through, but he could see that it wasn't just physical, it was emotional too. He sat down beside her, but kept a respectful distance, not wanting to overwhelm her any further. I don't want to make you feel worse, he said softly, but I need to understand. What is it? What's happening to you? Alira took a shaky breath, then looked away, focusing on the small crack in the wall that let in a sliver of light. It's something my people go through, she began, her voice trembling slightly. When we encounter human pheromones, it triggers a biological reaction. I can't control it, and the closer we get, the worse it gets. Jason swallowed hard, the weight of her words settling heavily in the air between them. He had suspected there was something more to the connection he felt with her, but hearing it spoken aloud made it all too real. So, this isn't just a simple misunderstanding, Jason said, his mind racing as he tried to piece everything together. Alira shook her head. No, it's far beyond that. The silence between them stretched, each of them lost in their own thoughts. Jason could feel his pulse quicken. The tension was rising again, but this time, it wasn't just the storm outside. Alira's presence, her struggles, everything about her pulled at him in ways he couldn't explain. He didn't know what to do. What happens now? He asked, his voice almost a whisper. Alira's gaze lifted to meet his, and for a brief moment, the confusion in her eyes gave way to something softer, something almost vulnerable. I don't know, she replied, her voice barely audible. But we'll have to face it. Together. Jason nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. The storm was still raging outside, but inside, the storm between them was even more intense, more complicated. He didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was certain. They couldn't avoid it any longer. The pull between them was undeniable, and whatever came next, they would face it together. Jason's heart raced as the storm outside grew louder, but inside, the silence was deafening. Alira sat across from him, her body tense and her eyes filled with a storm of their own. Jason couldn't ignore the pull between them, but he didn't know how to navigate the complexity of the situation. He kept his distance, but his mind was torn. Alira had admitted she was struggling, and every moment they spent together felt like it brought them closer to something neither of them could control. "I don't know how much longer I can fight this," Alira finally said, her voice trembling with a mix of uncertainty and something deeper. "It's like my body is. I don't know. It's confusing." Jason took a deep breath. He had never been one to back away from a challenge, but this wasn't something he could just solve with his usual confidence. "Alira," he said softly, his voice steady. "Whatever happens, we need to face it together. You don't have to carry this alone." Alira's eyes flickered toward him, her expression softening just a little. "I've never felt anything like this," she whispered. "It's overwhelming. My people are supposed to be in control, but right now, I don't feel like I am." Jason sat across from her, his eyes never leaving her face. He wanted to comfort her, to tell her that everything would be okay, but the words felt inadequate. He knew there was no simple fix for what she was going through. "You're not alone," he repeated, his voice calm but insistent. "I'm here. We'll figure it out." The room was quiet except for the howling winds outside. The storm raged against the shelter, but Jason and Alira remained in their own little world, separated from the chaos by the fragile walls of the cabin. Alira's breath began to steady, but her eyes remained troubled, as if she were still wrestling with something deep inside herself. "I can't explain it," she said, her voice barely audible. "It's not just the biology. It's something else. I've never felt this way about anyone before." Jason's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure what she meant, but the implication was clear. "Alira," he began, his voice soft but filled with understanding. "I don't know what's happening to you, but I'm not going anywhere. We're in this together, whatever it is." Alira looked at him, her eyes searching his face as if looking for reassurance. "I don't know if I can control this," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. "But I can't be around you without feeling drawn to you. It's like my body can't stop reacting to you." Jason's breath caught in his throat. He didn't know what to say. The tension between them was palpable, but he knew that pushing her away wasn't the answer. He couldn't stop what was happening, but he could help her through it. "We'll take it slow," he said, his voice steady. "One step at a time. We'll figure it out together." Alira nodded, her expression softening. For the first time in hours, she seemed to relax, though the uncertainty was still there, lingering in her eyes. The storm outside showed no sign of letting up, but inside, something had shifted. They were facing an unknown future together, and neither of them knew what would happen next. But they both understood one thing. Whatever came, they would face it side by side. The storm outside continued to rage, but inside the shelter, a quiet calm had settled between Jason and Alira. The tension that had once been suffocating now hung in the air like an unspoken promise. They sat across from each other, the distance between them a fragile boundary neither seemed ready to cross, but both felt it growing thinner with every passing moment. Jason could feel the weight of her gaze, even when she looked away, and it stirred something deep within him, a pull he couldn't explain. Alira was still visibly struggling, her breath slow and measured, but Jason could see the battle within her. He didn't understand the full extent of what was happening, but he knew she needed him now, perhaps more than ever. "Alira," Jason said softly, his voice gentle but filled with concern, "how are you holding up?" She hesitated, her eyes flickering to him before she spoke. "I'm trying to control it," she said, her voice shaky. "But it's like a wave I can't stop. It's all-consuming." Jason nodded, understanding her frustration. "We'll find a way," he said, though even he didn't know how. There was something in the air between them, something that wasn't just about the storm outside. Jason could feel it now, something intangible yet undeniable. He leaned forward, his instinct to comfort her pushing him to close the distance between them. "Alira," he said, his voice lower this time. "I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that whatever happens, we face it together." Alira met his eyes, her expression softening as she absorbed his words. "You don't understand," she said quietly, her voice filled with a mix of gratitude and sorrow. "This isn't something you can just fix." Jason felt a pang in his chest. He didn't know how to fix this. He wasn't sure there was a way to fix it. But the one thing he did know was that leaving her alone wasn't an option. I don't have all the answers, he said, his voice steady. But I'm here, Elira. I'm not going anywhere. She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face, as if looking for something more. And in that moment, Jason realized that, despite the uncertainty, despite the chaos outside and within her, Elira wasn't the only one feeling lost. He was too. They were both lost in this strange new reality, but somehow, together, they could find a way through it. Elira took a deep breath, her shoulders relaxing ever so slightly. Thank you, she whispered. I don't think I could do this alone. Jason nodded, feeling the bond between them deepen with her words. He didn't know what would come next, what the future held for them, or for the strange connection they shared. But in that moment, he knew he would do whatever it took to help her. He had to. The storm outside continued its relentless assault on the shelter, but Jason wasn't paying attention to the howling wind anymore. The real storm was inside them, and for the first time, it didn't feel quite as terrifying. They were in this together, and somehow, that made everything feel just a little more possible. The storm outside howled relentlessly, its winds pounding against the shelter's fragile walls, but inside, a strange sense of calm had settled between Jason and Elira. They sat in the dim light, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken words and the undeniable tension that had been building between them. Jason could feel it, an invisible pull drawing him closer to her, a connection neither of them fully understood but both felt deeply. Elira's breathing had steadied, though there was still a wariness in her eyes. Jason sat across from her, his posture relaxed, but his mind was anything but calm. Elira, Jason began, his voice steady but gentle. I know things are complicated right now, but we have to keep moving forward. We can't stay here forever. Elira nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on the floor. I know, she whispered. I don't know how to control it. I don't want to hurt you. Jason's heart clenched at her words. He could see the internal struggle she was facing, and it hurt him to know that she felt so alone in this. You're not going to hurt me, he said softly, his voice full of reassurance. We'll figure this out together. You're not alone in this, Elira. I'm here, no matter what happens. Elira looked up at him, her eyes searching his face as if trying to find some sign that he meant it. Jason met her gaze, his expression open and sincere. He didn't know how to solve the situation, but he did know one thing. He wasn't going to abandon her. Thank you, Elira said, her voice quiet but filled with gratitude. I don't know how you can stand being around me like this. Jason smiled, a small but genuine smile. You're not the only one who feels out of control, he said, leaning back slightly. I don't know what's going to happen either, but I'm not leaving. We'll get through this. Elira hesitated before speaking again. I don't know what's happening to me, she said, her voice thick with emotion. My body is reacting in ways I can't understand. It's like it's fighting me. I'm not sure how much longer I can keep fighting it. Jason's expression softened as he stood up and walked toward her, his heart aching for her. You don't have to fight it alone, he said, kneeling down beside her. Whatever happens. Next, I'm with you. We'll face it together. Elira looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and lingering doubt. But what if this is something I can't control? She asked, her voice trembling. What if it's too much for both of us? Jason reached out, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. We won't know unless we try, he said quietly. We can't control everything, but we can control how we face it. Want to be a burden to you, Jason, she whispered. I've never felt so out of control. Jason's heart clenched at her words. He didn't see her as a burden, far from it. She was a powerful being from another world, and yet here she was, struggling with something she couldn't escape. He stood up and walked toward her, kneeling down to her level. You're not a burden, he said softly. You never will be. I'm here for you, no matter what happens. We'll face whatever comes next together. Elira's eyes softened, her gaze never leaving his. I don't even know what I want anymore, she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know what this connection between us means, or where it will lead. But I can't pretend that it doesn't feel real. Jason felt a weight in his chest, but it wasn't heavy with fear. It was heavy with a sense of truth. I can't pretend it's not real either, he said, his voice steady. And maybe that's the first step. We don't have to figure everything out right now. We just need to trust that we're in this together, whatever it is. Alira nodded slowly, the light from the outside world casting soft shadows across her face. You make it sound so simple, she murmured. Jason smiled, though it was tinged with uncertainty. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, he said. But I know that we can make it through. You've been through so much already. You're stronger than you think. She hesitated for a moment, then looked at him with a deep, searching gaze. What if we're not strong enough? She asked, her voice thick with emotion. Jason reached out, gently taking her hand in his. We're stronger together, he said softly. And that's what matters most. Alira looked at their intertwined hands, her thumb brushing gently against his skin. For a moment, it felt like the world had paused around them, like the storm outside had faded into the background, and all that was left was the quiet understanding between them. Thank you, she whispered, her voice full of quiet sincerity. For being here. For not leaving me. Jason's grip on her hand tightened slightly. I won't leave you, Alira. Not now. Not ever. Alira's gaze lifted to meet his, and in that moment, the uncertainty that had clouded her eyes seemed to dissipate, replaced by something new, a glimmer of hope. Jason couldn't help but feel a sense of peace settle in his chest, though he knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And for the first time in what felt like a long while, Jason believed that maybe, just maybe, they had a chance at finding their way forward. Jason sat quietly beside Alira, the night stretching on with only the sound of their breaths and the occasional gust of wind outside. The storm had finally passed, leaving behind an eerie calm, as if the world had paused to catch its breath. Jason's thoughts were a whirlwind, but the moment they shared, the silence between them, brought a strange sense of clarity. Alira had begun to settle, the intensity in her eyes softening, though her unease was still palpable. She glanced at him, the quiet lingering between them. Do you ever wonder if we're making a mistake? Alira asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Jason turned his head to look at her, his heart tightening at the vulnerability in her tone. What do you mean? He replied, his voice steady but filled with curiosity. I mean, Alira paused, searching for the right words. All of this, the way we feel, it's new, uncharted. What if we're both just fooling ourselves? Jason thought for a moment, considering her words. It was true. They had no map for what was happening between them. They were learning as they went, navigating a strange, foreign world neither of them fully understood. But one thing had become clear. He wasn't willing to let go of what they had started, no matter how uncertain the path ahead seemed. I don't think we're fooling ourselves, Jason said finally, his voice firm with conviction. It might be complicated, but I know what I feel. And I know what you feel too. That's real. And that's worth exploring. Alira looked at him, her eyes searching his face as if trying to find some hidden truth. You're right, she whispered after a long pause. It's just overwhelming sometimes. I don't know how to process everything. It feels like my body, my mind, everything, isn't in sync. Jason reached out, his hand gently brushing against hers. We don't have to have all the answers now, he said softly, his touch reassuring. We'll take it one step at a time. Together. Whatever happens, we'll face it side by side. Alira nodded, her fingers instinctively intertwining with his, a silent promise passing between them. For the first time in what felt like forever, the uncertainty didn't feel so heavy. They weren't alone. The bond they shared, however strange and confusing, gave them strength. Jason squeezed her hand gently. You're not broken, Alira, he said quietly. You don't have to fight this alone. We'll figure it out, no matter what. Alira's eyes softened as she looked at him, the weight of her fears slowly lifting. I don't know how to thank you, she said softly. For being here. For not running away. Jason smiled, his expression warm. There's no need to thank me. I'm not going anywhere. They sat there for a long while, the warmth of their connection enveloping them. The night outside had fallen silent, and inside the shelter, they found a peace that neither had expected but both desperately needed. They were both strangers in this new world, facing challenges neither could have predicted, but together, they had found a sense of belonging. As the hours passed, they knew one thing was certain. They would face whatever came next, hand in hand, no matter how uncertain the future seemed. The day after the storm had passed, the world outside was still, the air heavy with the remnants of the chaotic weather. The alien sky stretched above them in a mix of colors Jason couldn't quite name, but the landscape, though unfamiliar, seemed to offer a certain kind of peace. The shelter they were in was simple, but it felt like a refuge now, a place where Jason and Alira could just breathe for a moment without the weight of the unknown pressing down on them. They had faced a lot together already, more than either of them could have anticipated, but today felt different. There was a subtle shift in the air between them. Jason had never imagined that he'd find himself in a situation like this, standing beside an alien, facing challenges no human had ever faced before. But here he was, and what had started as an uncertainty was now something he couldn't ignore. The connection between them was undeniable, a bond forged through shared struggle. Alira sat on the floor, her eyes gazing out the window at the landscape. Jason noticed the way she seemed lost in thought, her brow furrowed as if she was sorting through something complex, trying to make sense of everything. Alira, Jason said softly, his voice gentle but steady. You've been quiet today. Are you okay? She turned to face him, a slight smile playing at the corners of her lips, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. I'm trying to figure things out, she said, her voice laced with uncertainty. Everything feels so different. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do, how to handle all of this. It's overwhelming. Jason nodded, understanding more than she realized. I get it, he said, walking over to where she sat. But whatever you're feeling, whatever you're going through, we can face it together. Alira looked up at him, and for a moment, their eyes locked. In that brief instant, there was no more uncertainty, no more fear. It was as if they had both come to the same realization at the same time. This connection, whatever it was real, and it was something worth protecting. I don't want to drag you into something you don't understand, Alira said quietly, her voice full of hesitation. I don't want to cause you any pain. Jason shook his head. You're not dragging me anywhere, Alira. We're in this together. We always have been. Alira's expression softened, the vulnerability in her eyes giving way to something else, trust. She reached out, taking Jason's hand in hers. For a moment, neither of them spoke. There was no need for words. The quiet understanding between them was enough. Alira finally broke the silence.